He's a ladies' man. He's an alligator guy. He's won more championships than you've had a hot pockets. It's Steve Keirn on the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Big time, baby. Oh my gosh, there's an annoying fly in the studio. I hope I don't end up like Jeff Goldblum. Hey everybody, it's Bob Smith. Welcome back to another edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We are so glad to have you back. And this is a real special one. We have one of the all-time greatest professional wrestlers joining us. I say that without reservation, and nobody can dispute it. It's Steve Keirn. He's got a brand new book out. We're going to tell you all about it. It's fantastic. It's his second book in a couple of years, and it's well worth seeking out, let me tell you. More information than any other wrestler-written book I've ever seen. And let me just say that again, wrestler-written book. Now, I know like the Sheik book with Brian R. Solomon had a ton of information, and, you know, the more historical books like George Shire writes have gobs of information. But this one has... If you counted the names in this book, it would probably take you a week. So strap in. It's going to be a fantastic interview with Steve Keirn. I know you're going to enjoy it and learn more about him, as we all do when we read his new book. So won't you join me and grab yourself a tasty beverage, a hot toddy or milk of magnesia if you're my age. And we're going to really get down with some fun with Steve Keirn. And we'll be right back after a word from Joe Walsh. He's not a wrestler. He's Joe Walsh.
This is Joe Walsh. One thing I do when I'm not playing rock and roll is get on the air as an amateur radio operator. Also called ham radio, is a communication service provided by ordinary people just like you and me. We have a national emergency communication system in place 24/7, 365. Find out more about amateur radio at arrl.org/whatishamradio. See you on the air.
This is a high watermark for this podcast, ladies and gentlemen, because I have, and I told him this, I'm going to tell you that this is one of the greatest people ever to strap up a pair of wrestling boots. And I'm not saying that because I think so. I'm saying it because everybody else thinks so. This is Steve Keirn. Steve, welcome to the Outdated Wrestling Hour.
Oh, thanks, Bob. I mean, it's a nice way to start, but I appreciate that. Nice respect.
Well, let me tell you my Steve Keirn history. First of all, I was a tape trader. Remember I was with PWI, but for years before that, I was a tape trader, VHS tapes, the fabulous ones from Memphis. I have never seen audiences react to anybody the way they reacted to you and Stan. I mean, it was a phenomenon in and of itself. You guys sold probably more tickets than Barnum Bailey Circus. What was it like in those days? And I'm telling you, I have never seen a place come unglued like it did when you guys just walked down to the ring. It was amazing.
Well, first of all, it was all basically constructed because of the fact that we were remodels and remakes of an earlier tag team in that area years back that were phenomenal tag team, the Fabulous Fargos. Mm-hmm. And Jackie Fargo was still around. Jackie Fargo was he was like the Dusty Rhodes of Florida or the Bruno Sammartino of New York or whoever you want to pick out that just basically stood out as an icon. And he endorsed us. And between Stan and I mean, we could do the work. There's no doubt. Just throw the ball to us and we're going to catch it and run with it. But the idea of why it seemed like such a phenomenon was because we combined new fans with old fans. And the way that happened with Jerry Jarrett was the actual creator of the Fabulous Ones. He foresaw, because of the introduction to MTV music videos, and all along from my whole career up until then, to get over on TV, you wrestled enhancement guys. You wrestled guys that, everybody could call the match. It says, well, looks like Steve's going to win this one. I've never seen this guy before. I mean, so it just changed the whole concept of wrestling. And it made it look like we were different in an identity. And that grabbed everybody's attention. And usually baby faces have difficult times because they're borderline heels, simply because of the fact if they're in good shape, if they're good looking guys or whatever, and they're healthy and all that, they don't look like, the average person. Then they're kind of like the men don't like them, the best way to say it. I remember when I was a young wrestler here in Florida, one of my mentors was Jack Briscoe. He was a phenomenal athlete, had unbelievable background in wrestling. He ended up being the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And when he would wrestle, he had a 50-50 audience. And it was, I could figure it out personally. It was simple because he'd go out there, then, some guy with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend looks at Jack and looks at him, and looks at Jack and looks at him and says, oh, she looked like that. And poor, got nothing to do with Jack except for that, the husband or the boyfriend going, oh, yeah, I hate him. The first baby face that I ever saw that got over totally was Dusty. Mm-hmm. And it was because Dusty wasn't an intimidating, appearance. I mean, he wasn't the greatest wrestler. I mean, he's like my big brother, and I know being past, he doesn't have a chance to defend himself, but I would never say nothing bad about him. The idea is reality is reality. He went out there and he was very charismatic. He could draw people from no matter what their race, religion, culture, whatever. They came. And then it was never one of those issues where you're sitting with your girlfriend and your girlfriend says, I wish you looked like that. I mean, so it was a reverse psychology. But in Tennessee, we had Jackie Fargo. And Jackie Fargo, I mean, I wish you could just say it was magic and we were the magic. We weren't the magic. We were just the pieces that were put into the right positions at the right time. And it was very successful. I mean, obviously because the most important thing about, most and interesting thing about imitation is it's a flattery. You're flattering the people that did it. People used to say to me, aren't you hot? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, there's a Rock and Roll Express, there's a Fantastic, there's all these guys that followed you and everything and riding kind of. No, I'm glad everybody did well. Some did better. I mean, so it's the business. You got to understand the business. And I kind of feel like I did. I wasn't a shooter getting into the business and felt like I should be winning every match. I was just a soldier. And that was my whole career. I was just a soldier. Did what I was told. You give me a chance, I'll do it. If you don't give me a chance, I'm going to still do the best I can to make somebody else look good. That's what the business is about.
That's exactly right. That's the psychology, my friend. And that's what I love about talking about old school wrestling on this show is because I don't think the kids coming up realize that, what you just said. I don't think that they look at wins and losses the same way that the real professionals did back decades ago. Everything's changed in that regard. But then again, everything else has changed too.
Well, being an agent for Vince for about 5 or 6 years, I guess, I had to go and give people the bad news after production meetings if I had their match, who's going over and who's not. And, I could see it. It's just like, it's not like a genius to look at somebody and say, well, they're kind of wanting Shawn Michaels to go over you. Okay. What are you thinking? I mean, the only one keeping score, and I because I ran the developmental and everything, what my position was I had a lot of input that wasn't taught. in the ring. I had psychology in dressing rooms of how to get along and how to go forward, man, how to handle yourself business wise, and what to expect. I mean, my whole career when I was younger, one of the biggest advices I would get as a young kid was save your money, kid. And I kept every year I kept thinking, what money are they talking about? I'm not making enough money to save money. I mean, I'm just paying the bills here. So
Mhm.
anyway, but I mean, telling them that there's going to be an end, no matter who you end up being, no matter how great you think you are, it's going to go right by and there's going to be an end. So prepare for the end. I mean, enjoy the ride, but prepare for the end. So you're not caught like I said at the beginning, when I said, the guys that taught me were old enough to be my grandpa and I wrestled them, and
Mhm.
I'd say, why are you still doing this? It's bad investments, bad marriages, bad promoters, whatever it was, but they still had to put tights on and get in the ring. And we did it 7 nights a week, 8 or 9 times a week, depending on how many TV tapings in the territory.
Right. I was just talking to somebody else about this. I Sports. Wrestling is the only sport where you can start at 20 and retire at 55.
Right.
You
Now,
can't do that in baseball. You can't do it in football. Only in wrestling can you have a career that lasts that long if you're super lucky and stay healthy.
well, you really make the adjustments. You make the adjustments of how much your body has handled, what you think your body can handle from that day forward, and how well you're recuperating from the work you're doing. Because if you're going out there and you're not enjoying it, it comes across your work. One of the things is when I went to work for the WWF, early 90s, one of the wake up calls to me was that I was in my 40s and I wasn't wanting to go past my 40s. I was hoping that I'd miraculously hit the lottery and never have to wrestle after I was 40, but I
Mhm.
still in there. But the first time I hit the ropes and I did a simple move in the ring and took a tackle, I rolled right out to the floor. I mean, and it wasn't a heel move getting away. It was who put the ring together? I mean, I wanted to go under there and inspect the ring because it was like I was hitting the floor. And I freaked out. There was all these supports up under the ring, and I rolled back into the ref and then said one of Earl Hebner or somebody, I said, what's the deal with this ring, man? He said, we got a lot of big guys. Going, wow.
Mhm.
I mean, and even the ropes, the adjustment that you had is going from 18 by 18 rings that were 3/4 inch cable with garden hose wrapped around it, pulled as tight as it go. Then you all of a sudden move to the WWE and WWF area and that New York area, whatever. Now they got a 20 by 20 ring with ropes, real ropes.
Mhm.
That they don't bring you back the same way those cables bring you back. So you got a whole timing issue, an extra 2 feet issue. And I mean, it was like all of a sudden I started realizing, this was the greatest time. But now I'm feeling that creeping up of that age thing. And I'm saying, man, I mean, just the way time goes by, and I know you got to feel the same way too, Bob, is that, you could blink and 10 years are gone.
Damn
Boom, just like,
Skippy.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
I know,
so
I know.
you're looking for a way to figure out what your next move is.
Mhm.
I think the most asked question in my mind growing up the whole time, my whole life is, what are you going to be when you grow up? And even in the wrestling, I was going, what am I going to be when I grow up? What am I going to be? What am I going to be? Anyway, I'm retired. That's what I'm going to be.
Yeah, and I can't wait either. I'll tell you that for another story. Anyway, you just mentioned working from WWF, right?
Mhm.
And this is my other anecdote about you. I'm working in the office in Rockville Center at PWI, and you know Bill Apter, right? Everybody knows Bill.
Sure.
He was somehow had a line on who was going where and what was happening. We wrote 75% of what we wrote in the magazines was Bill telling us what was going on. He says, "Well, Steve Keirn is going to WWF." I said, "Oh, that's great. I bet they put him in one of those good guy tag teams." He said, "Nope, they're going to call him Skinner." Huh? They're gonna call him Skinner, and he's gonna have, like, alligators, and, he explained what you were gonna do, and I went, And I go, I forget how I said it. He was like, they're going to call that lady killer Steve Keirn Skinner. I couldn't grasp it at first, but brings us to your book. Okay. And by the way, it's called, this is the second volume. It's called the Keirn Chronicles, Volume 2, The Phenomenal Wrestling Resurgence of Steve Keirn. It's written, of course, by Steve Keirn and great Ian Douglas, who you rave about. And you really should. He's fantastic.
Absolutely. Can't talk more about Ian. Anyway.
So I'm reading the chapter where you are moving in, to WWF, and I'm finding out it really wasn't such a stretch, was it? You knocked me off my seat. You really did.
My mom didn't even recognize me. I mean, we live 130 miles apart. My parents lived in Melbourne, over on the other coast in Florida, and I hadn't since doing the PWF run there with Dusty and Gordon and Mike Graham that we ran for about not quite 2 years. Anyway, and when I ran into Jimmy Hart someplace, I just said to him, I said, when you see Terry, tell him, I said, I'd really think that I'd like to make one last stab at running a little bit in the business. And there wasn't no time that Terry called me. And, back then, like you said, communication wasn't the same, but you had house phones and stuff. And he said, listen, bro, man, you need to be up here. And he says, I'll call Vince right away. And so he did. I mean, between Jimmy and Terry, Hulkster, they got me an opportunity to go up there. And in my mind now, I'm trying to figure it out. It was kind of puzzling back then. Everybody, my whole career now, from 1972 up till 87, pretty much has been in a pair of wrestling tights and knee pads and boots, and that's it. And, some costumes. Not to say, but not as flamboyant and not as far out as they were doing. And I'd gotten interested in alligators in my spare block right there of time that I wasn't working full time. I decided I'm going to retire now and I'm going to be an alligator farmer. I'm going to buy a piece of property here in Florida and raise alligators. The alligator was the number one most expensive hide in the world. It was trading phenomenally. And so you were getting $18 a centimeter for a finished hide on alligator. I had met a lot of people that, were in high connections, like Burt Reynolds and Dan Marino, and people that wanted alligator things like boots and stuff like that. So I'm thinking, man, this is it. This is my next move. I'm going to be an alligator farmer. Well, I went in the first harvest, which was like a hunt. Very first one, the alligators have been on the endangered species list 26 years. And so now we're going to hunt. Anyway, I hunted, I killed 15. I come to WWF and prepared. I go, man, I don't know what they're going to come up with, but I better come up there and have some idea of something that I can do. And so I said, I'm going to be an alligator man. So I come up there and walk into Vince's office, and it's him and Pat Patterson. And Patterson and I had wrestled. So we weren't the greatest of friends, but we were very respectful towards each other. And I laid these alligator parts on Vince's desk. I put a skull, a paw, some teeth, and a big alligator hide. And he says, what's this? And I said, well, shooting-wise, which I understand the business is about to shoot, don't get me wrong, but shooting-wise, I just killed 15 alligators in Florida. So if you had to design something around me, you could come out and say, this is Steve Keirn. He's an alligator killer. If he can kill an alligator, he can kill anybody in the ring. Anything, So Vince looks at me and he goes, okay, let's do this. He said, let your beard grow. I had a short beard, not a long beard, just a nice trimmed up Miami Vice beard kind of thing. And then get rid of that bleach blonde hair. He says, let your hair grow out and get it back to brown. Just let it go natural. And he says, go home. I'm going to pay you for a month. And I'm thinking, pay me for a month and I'm not going to have to wrestle. No, I'm really on the right track here. So I'm going, okay. And he says, we'll get you back here in a month and I'll tell you what creative's done. And so I went home, did what he said, let the beard, there's a couple of things I'm good at in life, and one of them is growing a beard. I can grow a beard overnight. So I'm letting the beard grow and all these things. And so he brings me back and he says, I mean, and I'm not going to spoil it for the book, but at the same time,
Right.
this was kind of one of the stories in the book is how Skinner came about. And he asked me, he said, "Did you see the movie Deliverance?" And I'm really trying to suck up to Vince. I want the job. I mean, I'm not holding back on this or not holding back when it was then, because if the truth was, yes, sir, I've seen it. I've seen it 100 times. I mean, I was embellishing everything that he'd say. And he goes, okay, well, we want you to be one of those guys. So I'm thinking, oh, that's easy. You want me to be Burt Reynolds? And he's going, and he goes, he looks at me and Patterson looks at me and they go, not even close. He said, there's two guys in the woods with that beady. And he said, I want you to be one of those guys. Matter of fact, the guy that says, hey, boy, you got a right pretty mouth. And I looked at him and I looked at Patterson and I'm thinking, hey, it's a job, right? But I got to say that, so far as what people saw with Skinner and everything, I mean, he didn't get a push. He didn't get the dynamic thing, hung belts on him or anything like that. But I was never let down with what happened with Skinner because I had so much fun. I'd never been an actor. I mean, and now I'm not having to worry. I'm a heel. And my whole career had been babyface pretty much except for in Japan and Puerto Rico and places like that, Guatemala. But I'm excited. Now I don't have to worry about things. First of all, I didn't have to worry about getting ready. I didn't have to blow dry my hair, make sure everything's straight, pump up, do some push-up. I wandered around on the floor, put a big mouthful of licorice in my mouth, took a drink of water, and walked to the ring to bug noises. I told my mom, I said, Mom, you got to watch me. I got a new job, and I'm in the WWF, and tried to explain how to fight it. She got it on TV. Anyway, so she watched the whole show. Later on that week, whatever, I called her, said, Mom, what'd you think? She said, about what? I said, I have these vignettes. I've got these things where I'm coming out from underwater with a knife in my teeth and everything. She goes, are you not wrestling? And I go, I'm wrestling, but it's the build-up. I mean, what do you think of the character? And she goes, I don't know. I probably thought it was a commercial, so I didn't watch that part. So I tell her what to watch for the next week. So she watches, and then I call her and say, what do you think? She goes, my mom freaks out. She goes, oh, honey, you look terrible. She said, what happened? She said, I can't tell anybody at church you're still wrestling. She says, you didn't look too good, So she was like set back with the character. But I met so many people. WWF was in a heyday at that time period.
Yeah.
And every match on the card was a main event from territories all over the country. I mean, I could be on the first match with Ricky Steamboat or the second match with Kerry Von Erich. It was a star-studded cast. We went places, and the people that came that wanted to come in the back and stuff, it was like, I never met so many movie stars and music entertainers. And I mean, I'm a big mark for all of those guys, and I'd say, hey, you think I could get my picture made with you? And I mean, I jacked it up a little bit at times when it was somebody. Carl Malone got to throw me over the top rope in WCW during a thing, and I asked him. I said, my son's a big autograph collector of basketball players. Do you think you could sign? He took his tennis shoes off that said the mailman and signed them. I had to wear them over my neck, around my neck, getting on the plane. And Bret Hart freaked out because he was showing a picture of Malone and signed it. I got his tennis shoes. How'd you do that? I said, I don't know. You ask people the way you'd want to be asked. It says, hey, my son's a big fan. Would you mind signing something? And boom. So it worked. But going and traveling. Then we went to Europe and we went all over the country, and we were, Australia. We went everywhere. And WWF, so far as what other people have to say about it, I guess it all falls under opinion. But for me, it was like unbelievable. I mean, we stayed in 5-star hotels and just first class. There was always food. There was food for catering. There was food. I couldn't believe how much free food. And at the beginning, I was pretty hungry. If you watch Skinner, he gets porky, gets his bigger pair of pants every like 6 months. I couldn't stay out of catering. I mean, and free food. So anyway, but it was the experience and all of that was really tremendous. And people you work with, you can always complain about them and say, well, that guy, I don't like that guy. I don't like this guy. But when you're smart enough to get it, you're working for somebody,
Mm-hmm.
you do what they say and you do it to the best of your ability. And then if there's a problem, you accept responsibility and say, hey, it's my fault. I can remember when I was an agent and Vince got mad about a match, and I'm just calling the match. I'm not in the match. And he calls me up in the gorilla and starts screaming in my face. And I'm going, oh my God, this is horrible. Jerry Briscoe's sitting right there. He was a timekeeper. I think Michael Hayes was in there, but only a couple people, but he was totally belittling me and screaming. And I'm thinking headbutt, nut shot. What am I going to do? I might as well just knock him out. And then I'm thinking, whoa, this guy that writes your check. Then I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. 100%. Instead of battling and saying, it's not my fault. That's not my fault. I just said, I accept full responsibility and I'll never let it happen again. And it was an amazing scene because he turned his head like my dog when I'm trying to figure out what I want. And, okay, well, I'm done, I guess. That was all you needed to say.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I wore that out. I mean, you're going to, now every time you get in trouble, you're going to say, it's my fault. Let's get it over with.
But you seem to have an ability to see the big picture in things, like reading your 2 books. Like, it isn't just a moment where somebody's getting on your ass like that. You're looking at the entire spectrum of what your job was, what their job was, and what the boss's job was.
Exactly.
And not everybody has that ability to discern like you did in that position, I guess.
Too many egos. The ego thing is what hurts most people. Your ego. Here it is. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ. I have a Savior. I used to repeat Philippians 4:13 walking in the ring. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But ego is edging God out. I mean, it's just like pride. It's just like, problems you have that are your problems. And if you sell your problems, then it's still your problem. But if you swallow all of that stuff and you let God handle it and everything, and you just lay back and say, I'm in your hands, you'll find that life becomes easier. And you're not challenged to challenge somebody, to debate, to argue. I mean, the older I've gotten, the more I've understood having 2 ears and 1 mouth. Just listen. Just listen. And when it's your turn, you can say something. But I hope you say something good.
That's good advice. I read a quote. Somebody quoted one of the Bushwhackers, and the quote was something like, I'm just paraphrasing. God, the 2 of us used to kill ourselves every night, bleed all over the place, work for 42 minutes. But when we went to WWF, we worked 5-minute matches. We were more over than ever, and we didn't have to murder ourselves every night. Was it a similar position for you there? Was the work a little easier just in terms of in ring?
It had its easy times, but it had difficult times too. And, without putting names on people, there were some people that had issues with drugs. And when you had to work with them, they could be the kindest, nicest person in the world. And you loved them, but you couldn't cover up for them being in the state of mind they were in. And you had to try to control the situation. Now you're talking about huge crowds that you're doing it with. I mean, one of the things I always pointed at is a lot of times when I worked with somebody that was difficult to work with, and it's not, maybe it was me. Maybe it wasn't me not working properly with them, but I felt uncomfortable as a heel. I'd start working with a referee. I mean, I'd start shoving the ref or calling him in to see if I'm choking and whack him on the back or something just to take the attention off of what's going on here that's not working out right and get back into the entertainment thing of what needs to be done here in front of this audience. I mean, and also, That's like I said in books and stuff. The books I wrote, had to write 2 books because I spent 44 years of my life in this business, and you can't condense that into 1 book. But it has a parallel, and it shows a definite division from the territorial days into the high speed cable days and the mega houses and the mega travel and everything. And personally, I would have rather been born like right maybe 10 years ago instead of some 70 years ago, because at that gap that I got into and we were doing so well, we still weren't really getting rich. I mean, you're making good money, but it wasn't consistent. The future of getting out, because like now, I would train them students, the ones that you're watching now at FCW, when I had them under my control, I'd walk out into an arena and say to them, I'm going to make every one of y'all millionaires. I'm going to make you millionaires. Do you believe me? And they'd go, yeah, we believe you. And they are. I mean, they are now. I wasn't lying to them, but I was kind of like pumping them up, you know what I mean? So they'd work hard that day. But I said, I'm going to make you guys rich. And I'm really proud of all of them. And I'm glad they got, to the levels they got. I don't have any heat with anybody. I'm sure you're not going to get that out of everybody. Somebody's going to say, well, he didn't mention me. He got heat with me. I ribbed a lot of guys. And so there's a lot that would have never found out if my friends hadn't stooped me off just in a conversation saying, hey, you remember when Keirn did this to Kurt Hennig? So why did you say that? That was a hidden secret up until now. Now that you got to say that and expose me. I got a ton of wrestling books in my home too. Not just the 2 that I wrote, but I've got other books, and Bobby Heenan stooged me off for a rib up on Jerry Lawler in his 2nd book. And I went to Bobby, said, Bobby, what did you tell me that for? Why did you say that? And he said, well, I just want to get the story straight. I'm going, great.
They never think about repercussions, do they?
No. I became a target for a long time at the end there. I mean, everybody, if you can knock him off, you're going to get a real reputation. Only problem with that is there's always a rebuttal. And I'm a creative guy. I like creative stuff. I've come from a creative business. I've been trying to create an image of people believing that I'm really wrestling or beating somebody up. And so I'm always thinking. Eddie Graham gifted me with a lot of that. I mean, he was a really intelligent promoter. And I mean, a lot of my psychology came from him. And of course, Jack Briscoe, Harley Race, Dory Funk, Terry Funk. Those were my guys. And, they taught me a lot. Not very many people teach in the wrestling business. That's one of the things I tell students. If you think you're going to go from here at FCW and you're going to go up to the WWE and all of a sudden Undertaker's going to take you under his wing and he's going to teach you everything he knows, you might want to reconsider that. And the reason is we're playing King on the Mountain. Everybody in the wrestling business is playing King on the Mountain like a childhood game. They're all trying to be on the top of that mountain. But to get there, you got to do a lot of clawing, kicking, stabbing in backs, all kinds of stuff. And then to stay there, you really got to fight to stay up there. So, so far as friendships and stuff like that, you're not going to have a whole lot of them in the wrestling business that you want to push in front of you. Hey, you know what? I got just the perfect guy to do that angle you wanted to do with me. Why don't we put him in there? That ain't going to happen. So.
Yeah. Something you mentioned Eddie Graham before,
Yes, sir.
My mind goes bang, Florida. And one of the most pleasing parts of this book, to me, the 2nd book, is how you detailed your history with the PWF. You say you were one of the owners or the owner, and it's like, that was the I always talk about Bruiser Bedlam, and the equal is the PWF, because I used to get the tapes when I was with the magazines. Folks, if you never saw those tapes, that was a fantastic wrestling show. You brought back that championship wrestling from Florida flavor that the scene was missing. And I was really sad that it only lasted a couple of years because it was really good. I mean, for somebody who likes traditional wrestling the way I do, it was like an answered prayer. Do you consider that overall a good experience, even though it didn't last all that long?
Well, it was my goal. I mean,
Mhm.
I mentioned it in the books, and my goal wasn't to be the main event. I'm not a great talker. I mean, I could do Skinner. I'd do great promos as Skinner because I'm imitating some redneck in the movie Deliverance. And I'm good at imitating rednecks. I spent most of my career in the Southeast and all through these Southern territories. So I'm
Mhm.
good at that. But my goal in my career changed when I started getting older and I realized I'm not going to be that guy. I mean, I'm going to help get that guy over or whatever. And that's where I'm a soldier. But I want to be the owner. Why do I want to be the main event? The main event's going to get replaced. I mean, let's get smart here, Steve. What's the best place to shoot? I mean, if you're going to shoot for the stars, why don't you shoot for who's making the most money and who don't have to move? Okay, well, there's the owner. So now my sights were on that. And the first opportunity came along to actually be an owner was PWF. Just like I said, the funding wasn't there. The funding wasn't there, but also the times are changing. You know, for somebody like you that really enjoyed the kind of like territorial, good angles, 7 days a week, when you're in the same city 52 times a year, you got to be different. You can't come out on TV or in live events and be that same guy they saw last week. So you have to be very creative. And so we had that, and we had who's better than Dusty Rhodes promos? Nobody. I don't
Nobody.
care. I mean, it's an opinion, and everything in wrestling is an opinion. Even the wrestling itself is an opinion. You like so and so, I like so and so. You don't like him, I like him. Don't matter. So the idea is it's all opinionated, but Dusty Rhodes to be in there, and he wasn't a part of it at the beginning. It was me, Mike, and Gordon. And then Mike was the one that suggested Dusty was having a problem. I think it was in Charlotte or somewhere he was working and he was leaving.
Yeah.
Said, heck yeah. Even if he wants to be the president, I don't care. Come on, Dusty, because I knew he had the ability to put asses in seats in Florida for sure, no matter where we went. And so then Gordon Soley. I mean, Gordon, great mind, great commentator, but how do you identify with people that are out there still waiting to see you come back and go, hello, Gordon Soley, Florida Championship Wrestling,
Mhm.
whatever, you know what I mean? And then it's his tagline, and this was Gordon Soley saying, so long from the Sunshine State. After that, I could fill in for Gordon, but I'm not just kidding. But we had to create something, and we had the opportunity, and we did a really great job. If we'd have had the money and somebody was really interested, we'd have probably still been doing business somehow, but it didn't have it, and we ran out. And
Mhm.
here comes Patterson and who else? Bruce Pritchard, and they wanted to pick from our talent. Then I got the Nasty Boys, and Scott Hall, and I got Raven. I mean,
Mhm.
Scotty the Body, Scotty Levy, and I got DDP and Big Steel, Fred Ottman. Man, we had a montage of characters and stuff, and so they're picking. And I know that anybody that's going to be asked if they want to come work for them is going to go, and
Right.
I'm going to say go. Go. I mean, even Mike Awesome, I started him at that time period. So we had quite a cast in there, but they started dropping out when Dusty dropped out. And, I kind of got left with all the bills all at one time. And, I had zero income, money, and savings and all of that. And I'm going, oh my God, this is just what I need. Your dream to be the promoter is the biggest nightmare you ever had. And I was a blink away from, going right back into it again. And so, but when it came to working for the WWF, it was a breath of fresh air. I made quite a bit of money in my eyes, not everybody else's, but it was
Mhm.
a lot for me. Got my feet back on the ground. And when that kind of dwindled out and went to WCW and that kind of dwindled out, then it come up with the WXL. All of a sudden, had magic again. I'm a promoter again. Now I'm going to be the
Mhm.
promoter of but it was a sure thing. Everything was guaranteed money. casinos, all Indians, the whole deal, did a tribal deal. I even had Tatanka working for me. Then we have a guy die of a drug overdose when we're in Peru, and the whole thing just caved in. All the backers jumped. Boom, boom, it's over.
What is it about Dusty leaving Florida? Everything goes to hell.
Well,
If you go back through wrestling history, when he left Florida back in his heyday, I mean, when there was Mulligan and Sullivan and those guys, and he leaves, everything started to shrivel up. That just shows you what a presence he was in the
oh, no
business and
doubt.
how he drew people.
No doubt. I mean, I refer to Dusty in both of my books. I mean, because I uniquely covered, like, from 72 through all of this era, and ended up going 44 years from then. And so I covered 4 generations of wrestlers, but some of them I met at the beginning, and they had manipulated their way around doing things just like I had. And Dusty was one of them. So he was like a big brother to me right up to the day he died. Matter of fact, he used to get on me because when he was working over at NXT, they'd have me come over there and help do some kind of special counseling or whatever. But I'd be worried about him because he was getting thin and he looked pasty, And I said, man, what's wrong with you? You need to get checked. You need to get checked. And he had a stigma about going to the hospital. Both his parents died in hospital. He said, bro, baby, I ain't going to hospital. I'm not going to no hospital. He never went to a hospital until when he died. When he died, I mean, he had problems with blood and stuff like that, but he called me 3 days before he died. I had texted him and sent him a picture of me and him when I was real young and he was kind of young. I always say he's always older than me. So anyway, and he had a tie-dye T-shirt on, and he said, babe, I love that tie-dye T-shirt that I had. I wish I still had that. And he asked me how I was doing. God bless you, brother. I'll see you next time you come over. And then boom, he was gone. That's some of the hardest parts right now for me is waking up to see who's gone.
I hear you. I hear you. It's like I had a family of 5. There's only 2 of us left. It gets hard in your head and your heart, but you gotta remember, we're still above the ground, and that's a big thing.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Why waste the time on
this is actually
bitterness and stuff?
Anniversary today of Bobby Eaton's wife passing away. And what was unusual about that or different about that whole scenario was I love Bobby Eaton. To me, he was one of the greatest workers there was in our industry. And 40 days later, he died. So when Bobby's wife passed away, which was today, she died of cancer. And so when she died, it wasn't no time before he was gone too. And he was a young guy. I mean, when I say
he wasn't that old, yeah.
When you're 72, everybody seems like a young guy.
I hear you. I'll tell you what, how many people are finally recognizing Bobby Eaton as one of the greatest people ever in a ring? And I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Oh, absolutely. I have my own list of, the top so-and-so, whatever. And I periodically speak. It's just an opinion. It's Steve Keirn's opinion. But I feel like I have the right to have an opinion on talent and everything. And that's the number one guy to me in the industry that I met and spent a lot of time with and shared friendship with and watched him work, was Curt Hennig. I mean, to me, Curt Hennig was the best. He was the best overall. He was second-generation wrestler. He had the look. 6'2" or 6'3". I mean, about 245, great athlete, agile. He performed in the ring like nobody. He didn't imitate nobody. He didn't take much from anybody else. Maybe stole something from me, probably. But I'm just kidding. But when we were in the AWA, he was pretty young, and I influenced him quite a bit. So we became friends and stayed friends. But he could talk. I mean, he could do stuff and take bumps, and he was just a phenomenal worker. And he was number 1, but Bobby Eaton was number 2. And yeah. Bobby Eaton only fell short because of his interviews and promos. And I'm not like a politician that can make up stuff that would cover it up. I mean, that wasn't his deal.
Mm-hmm.
But really tell you, in the ring, I mean, you know, you
Oh,
never
man.
worried about him hurting you. If you were getting over, he got you over better than anybody got you over. If he was working with you, I mean, he was my partner in the team Bad Attitude just for a short time, but
Right.
I really had a bad attitude at the time. And so me and Eric Bischoff didn't really, you know, kind of group together. So for whatever it's worth, I mean, you know, he had his opinion, I had mine, and he was the one who was paying things. So I should have had his opinion too, but I didn't. Anyway.
I think the best comment I personally ever got from a professional wrestler is I'm in St. Louis, and I spent a little time with Bobby Eaton, you know, after the matches.
Right.
And as he leaves, he shakes my hand and goes, "You're good people." What's a better compliment than Bobby Eaton telling you that, right?
Yeah.
Because he's good people.
As simple as that is.
Yeah.
That's such a high compliment coming from somebody like
and
that.
he was good people. You know, I never heard
he's the best.
one of the most beloved men in the history of the sport. There's no two ways about it. Nobody ever had a bad word to say about him.
The only thing you don't want to do is you don't want to take a piece of tape that you tape your wrists with and tape a rubber lizard to a shoe if it's sitting in between your seat, sitting in between the seats of your car and he's in the back seat. When he fell asleep, I taped a lizard to his shoe and said, "Bobby, there's something on your shoe." Oh my God, kicked out the sun. He kicked out the light, ripped the hole up that thing that hangs down. I mean, you know, he tore up the hole. That was the biggest. It was funny at first, but then, man, couldn't get it off of his shoe and he kicked everything, tore up the whole inside of that rental car. Anyway, bless his heart.
You prankster, you. I mean,
you know, you get bored. I mean, that was kind of what it was. I mean, you know, we talk about 30 minutes a night, 40, 20. I mean, it kind of dwindled down. When I first started, you average 15 minutes minimum in your match. I mean, you only had so many talents and had to have so many matches. You had the show had to run so long. I mean, live events. And I mean, you know, then I can't tell you how many 1 hour Broadways I did with world champions, Flair, Funk, you know, Guy Harley. I mean, you know, and who'd imagine doing an hour now? But, you know, we had to do what we had to do. So you learn to handle the time periods and stuff.
Well, you know, it's funny if they do a long match now. And again, I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but the way they do things is entirely different than when you were on top. I mean, it's you could win a roll up in your day, and the people would go nuts if you were the fan favorite. You know, they would go bananas just because you won.
Right.
Now it seems like in pro wrestling, you have to obliterate your opponent before you can get a pin.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? It's a harder. I can't say it's harder hitting. It's just a different mindset with what a victory is. You know what I'm saying?
I got an answer. I got an answer for that.
Okay, please. This is interesting. I like to hear that.
Okay, there's my answer. Wrestling is the same as action movies. It just has to be outdone and outdone because the audiences are spoiled. They've seen this, they've seen that. It reached to a level where, you know, they were expected to see pretty much a pattern match, a babyface heel, good versus evil. I mean, you know, easy to call. A referee participating half the time as a heel, not looking the right way, whatever. It was storytelling. We told a story. We tell a story of the good versus evil. We'd have its downsides where babyface is selling, looks like getting desperate, whatever. We're talking about territorial days opposed to now and what the difference is and why, you know, I can condone what's going on very easily. I mean, you know, I had a lot to do with it. I mean, even though it wasn't me physically doing things, I was part of the process of being an agent, overseeing matches, and then running the developmental and teaching the new talent. And here's the thing. Wrestling is the same as action movies. Action movies, if you were to date yourself and go back or just, you know, go on YouTube and watch Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry or something. And Clint Eastwood was the big stud in Dirty Harry. And if you count, you can count the number of people that die in the movie, first of all. I mean, you know, so maybe 4 or 5 people actually die. 1 or 2 get beat up, whatever. But the end thing is he gets the bad guy in the end. Now let's fast forward to Keanu Reeves with John Wick. I mean, he spends probably the beginning of the movie, he's going to kill probably at least 30 guys. And he's going to blow their brains out, hold them by the head, shoot them, whatever. But that's what's happened to wrestling. Wrestling has gotten to an era where they're fickle. Wrestling fans are fickle to the point where they've seen everything. So now you're going to have to impress them. And to me, the examples I use is we wrestle by emotion. We emotionally try to move an audience into, first of all, believability. Second of all, a story that they got caught up with and didn't stop and say, oh, this is fake, and stand up and yell, scream. Old ladies hit you in the head with a purse if you're a heel. And that's just the way it was. But the matches would take like 30 minutes. And if you looked at the match and you want to for me to really get in depth, if you watch the match had meaning. And the reason it had meaning is because you were taught different. Eddie Graham taught me if a heel takes me down, beats on my arm or beats on my leg for 20 minutes, and I fight to get up, and he keeps taking me down. By the time the crowd gets me moving enough that I make some miraculous thing or the heel misses something and I come back and make a comeback, I better be selling my leg. I better be selling what he did to me for that whole time period. Or I've just thrown everything out the window. You know what I'm saying? Now we go forward. If you watch the matches, they're concentrating on movement. We wrestled under emotion. They wrestle under movement. Everything is about movement. I mean, I can watch, and I do. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not satisfied when I watch because I feel like we're trying to acrobat each other now. And the moonsaults are so worn out and diving through the ropes, and there's got to be 3 or 4 people. My friends are ribbing me to death by sending me all these videos of Mexicans and jumping off and missing. And I mean, there's a million bad YouTube videos out there.
Oh, I've seen them, yeah.
Independent wrestling. Well, the talent that's in the big positions and everything, some of them have to resort to that because if they're trying to make an impression. Some of them are having to resort to that because of their size. They're not mistaken for a professional wrestler walking through the airport. They're mistaken for some kid going through the airport that looks like he's some guy that lives next door. One of the magics of wrestling at one point was, and Eddie Graham explained it to me, is, hey, kid, you don't want to look like the kid that lives next door. Okay, what does that mean? He says, people don't pay a ticket to see the kid lives next door. You need to look different. You need to have an appearance. You need to, whatever it takes, you need to be standing out. And my friends, they all got it. And that was an error. I mean, when I say my friends, like Macho Man Randy Savage and I were best friends, and we were really close. He lived here in Florida and everything. A lot of people didn't understand him. A lot of people didn't like him. And a lot of other wrestlers had issues with him. But, it's the king on a mountain thing we're playing. Randy stepped on toes, but he had to do what he had to do. Kevin Sullivan was one of the guys that taught me a very valuable lesson. When he first came to Florida, he came in and he was so far up Mike Graham's ass. They made him tag team partners, and he would just brown nose him to death. I'd listen to him talking. Fast forward, we went to Carolinas. I was in the Carolinas with Kevin. I'm riding with him, and I say to him, maybe one too many beers. I said, I used to think you're a real jerk. I said, you used to brown nose Mike Graham so bad, made me so sick. And Kevin says to me, he called me Stevie. He's the only guy who would call me Stevie, but he says, Stevie, it's one thing you need to know. Nobody's going to take care of you but you. And you know what that means? Nobody takes care of your family but you. If I have to brown nose some guy that's dad owns a territory to take care of my family, I'm going to brown nose. Am I going to like it? Maybe not. Maybe I can overlook it. But here's the idea. Don't let anything you do bother you if people talk about it. because at one thing, they're talking about you, and that keeps you out in the open. And so then, like I said, now we're talking about the two businesses, we're talking about the two eras. And so in these two eras, you've got attendances because that you had 52 times a year, you're in the same city. Now you've got one time a year, you're coming through the city with, Barnum and Bailey. You got everything, and you throw it at them. And you got high dollar ticket prices. You got merchandise that's through the ceiling. But the thing about it is even my friends, and I tell them straight to their faces, that don't be jealous. You just got to get it. It's just a new era, and you're a dinosaur. And when things passed you by, you blinked and it was gone. And it's not that business anymore. It's two separately kind of entities that one went and fast forward. And you're going to tell me, honestly, you're going to say, well, that sucks. That's no good. I hate it. It'll never make it. It'll never make it. Wait a minute. I mean, I don't know if you know, but in WrestleMania in Philadelphia, it was 2 nights in a row of 75,000 in attendance.
Right.
So you're going to say that's wrong? You're going to tell me that what I taught those guys at FCW and they're doing now is wrong? It's not wrong. It's just different. It's just different. And generations don't like change. I mean, you take a generation that was what they did, but that was the different time of their life. They might have been a kid, and that was the biggest thing in their world, to watch wrestling on TV and then go to a live event. And now they're an adult, and it doesn't have the same magnetism to them to draw them in there. And they're going, I don't want to go see that. Those guys look like little kids. I mean, I measured the talent when I watch the shows, and they're not going to like this if any of them hear it. But if I measure them, I see how tall they are with the top rope or the referee. When they're standing beside a referee and they're the same size as the ref, I'm going, what?
No, me too. Me too.
And that's just, old school, your own mental kind of block. But it's still a great thing. It's just different. You got to accept it. I mean, I would have never been a Taylor Swift fan. Look at me.
Yeah, but here's one point I'll make, and I make this point on the show a lot, and I'm probably like a broken record, but I feel like I need to say these things. You've been responsible, or you've helped and given a guiding hand to wrestlers from the past, the present, and probably the future. Shoot, the forward in your book is written by Drew McIntyre, one of today's biggest stars, right?
Right.
Here's my point. My problem is with all these spot fests in today's matches, guys leaping off high things onto low things, other risky maneuvers over and over in the course of, let's say, a 17-minute match. I worry about injury, career-ending injuries. I'm afraid, particularly in the indies, not so much WWE and things like that, but the indie scene, where barely trained wrestlers are getting into the ring and mimicking things that trained professionals are doing. I'm afraid of catastrophic injury happening. Am I a softie? Because, here's the problem. I was around a lot of pro wrestlers in my magazine days. I saw guys coming up. I saw guys living in their cars to go to wrestling school, in a state over or something like that.
Sure.
I respect professional wrestlers like they're baseball players or football players, great athletes. So my point is, are they overdoing it? That's my question.
The answer is they think they're doing the best they can to make an impression, but they're not stopping to look around. Here's an example. When I was an agent, your job as an agent is you take matches that are assigned to you and you help them construct the match and you help them complete their finish and you make sure they understand how much time they have to deal with that. When you're doing that, you're trying to limit them. And one of the things I did as an agent, and whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, is I gave my talent respect. And I'd say, okay, come here. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to give you what they want out of this match, the time, and I want you to put it together. I'm going to go to catering and eat. I'm going to come back and I'm going to sit. And I want you to tell me what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. And when I'd come back, they're still talking about it. And sometimes I come back again, and I'd have talent talking about a 5-minute match for 4 hours. Then I'm going, you got to understand, don't try to cram 5 pounds of crap in a 1-pound bag. You've got to make this thing make sense. And it's not about a tennis match. And that's what I call it when they do the back and forth so much, back and forth, back and forth. When people are trying to go, yay, boo, boo, yay, yay, boo, boo, whatever. I mean, so they're confused. And with all of that being said, I mean, it's harder for the fans to grasp anything out of it except for the finishes and then the fancy moves. And they get what I call golf crap. I mean, a lot of the sound that comes across TV is added in there because a lot of times arenas aren't as, loud as they sound like they are on television. But I mean, it's like, okay, you do a moonsault, golf clap. Okay, cool. I mean, and then the story doesn't, it's just back and forth. And here's another thing that is wrong. Too many 2 counts.
Yes, sir. Hallelujah.
Too many 2 counts.
Right there with you.
A 2 count is nearly the end. If I was a young baby face and I was in the state of Florida and Eddie Graham's standing up on a rail looking down on me and I'm working and somebody did something to me in the first 5 minutes in the match and it wasn't a devastating move, maybe just a body slam or a vertical suplex, and I take it and I stay there. The referee goes, 1, 2, and I just kick out. Boy, my trouble when I get back. He says, you need to build your durability. I mean, first of all, you should never get a 2 count on somebody else until the match has reached a peak of you both have done the best you can to beat each other. And now you're starting to use semi-finishing movements, but don't wear them out. I mean, don't wear them out to the point where now every match sits in the back in the dressing rooms. They're watching and seeing they get a really big response on 2 counts. So what do? They come out and say, let's take a 2 count. I mean, what happened to when they used to kick out before the referee even got down? Just to show this baby face is one badass. You ain't going to beat him that easy. I mean, I can give you a million baby faces, but they wouldn't stay down for 2 counts. But that was just the way you're educated. And then that whole thing is the build up to get to that 2 count or the 1, 2, and you put your foot on the rope. You're almost done, but you still got enough to keep your fans in behind you and keep it going. So things like that are gone. And one of the things was the referees were gone. And when I was an agent, I used to try to say, man, Vince, let the referees play. I mean, sometimes the referee can help make a match, but they've made them officials and they don't do that. And I'm stuck in the 70s or the 80s, so it's not going to happen. But
sir,
anyway,
have you ever seen a WWE referee make a 10 count when guys are battling outside the ring now?
No,
it's the Macarena.
They can't count to 10.
They go 1, and they literally step back 3 steps and put their arms down. Then they move up the 3 steps. 2, I don't get it. But then again, the fans are conditioned not even to pay attention to the referees now.
No utilization of a referee whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And that might be something that'll be implemented again someday. I mean, that was under Vince, and Vince had his things. Vince would say, they're officials.
Right.
He would say it real loud to me and Art and Dean and Finley sitting in there, and he'd go, they're officials, not referees. I remember when they were sitting in there, and we're always wondering what he was going to say because it was going to be something was going to happen at a production meeting. I don't know if it was Raw or pay-per-view or what. But we're sitting in there, and he comes in and says, "Okay, the first announcement: we're no longer calling the wrestling fans." And I got, I have a hard time laughing and keeping from smiling. So I had to put my hand over my mouth and I looked at Art, and Art's going, "This is going to be good." And he says, "From now on, They're the WWE universe. Don't call them fans. That's an insult when you call wrestling fans fans. And we're going like, come on, fans. I mean, old timers that were in there as agents, we're talking. I said, yeah, well, you need to switch the strap. It's not a strap. It's a championship title belt.
That's right. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So,
Yeah.
but he's the boss.
At the end of WrestleMania this year, Triple H made a subtle change in that one of the last things on the broadcast of WrestleMania when Cody Rhodes won the title,
Right.
Michael Cole says, "I love professional wrestling." That made headlines. When's the last time they used the term professional wrestling?
Well,
Sports
Vince was
entertainment.
there.
Professional wrestling.
Yeah,
right?
Vince didn't like it called that.
Right.
They're not professional wrestlers. They're performers, they're talent.
Right.
When I first went back as an agent.
Superstars, I think, is his term, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Now, but when I first went back there and I was an agent, the one thing about the business is nobody really wants to help you and smarten you up. Like going into the first production meeting, those agents that I rode there with could have said, "Hey, Keith, watch you don't say this, watch you don't say that, don't do this, don't do that." Not a one. Nobody. I had to fail forward. Let me tell you, I got stuck and I would hear terminology that I'd never heard before. And I'm going, what are they talking about? And you can't talk because Vince can hear everything. But Vince would say, and babyface shine, that wasn't a term that I had used ever in my career. And that's the number one thing. Shine the babyface, make them look good. Anyway, but they would say stuff like camera terms too, like key grip and people like that. I had no clue who they were talking to. And I remember we had Heidenreich. I don't know if you remember him, but
I remember him, sure.
He came in and it was a SmackDown show. And me and Fit had to go out there and pull him off the stage. Two agents had to go pull him off the stage. So they're leading it up to it. And they said, okay, we want you, Keirn and Fit, to hit the stage and grab Heidenreich and drag him back in here. He's going to be on the fist. And I'm the fist. Where the hell is the fist? I'm going, I said, he's going to be on the fist. So I'm thinking that's a stage set piece or something, like out there. And he's going to run down the ramp and somewhere down there by the ring, he's going to be standing on a fist. And so I thought, well, I just won't say nothing because I don't want to look stupid again. So I just decided I'm going to follow Fit out. So Fit go flowing through the curtains. And I'm right behind him, and he slams on the brakes right there at the beginning. And that's the first time I'd seen it. There's a big fist coming out right over the gorilla position that they had mounted right there. And there's hiding right up there. But I thought it was some kind of TV terminology, but I wasn't going to act stupid. So what's the fist, Vince? Because if I would have, he would have really laid into me. It's that big thing that you see when you walk out.
That's just another night at the office, right?
Yeah. There was a lot of them.
Well, speaking of nights at the office, this book.
Yes.
Now, I am not blowing smoke at you. Last year, I bought Brian R. Solomon's book about the Sheik, won the Book of the Year award right at that cusp. I just happened to get it and read it. And I loved it because it taught me so much about the territories. Basically, just not the insider stuff, just how the territories worked.
Right.
Your book has a lot of that too, but it has more than that. Like I said, if you were to take every name that's in this book, fans, and list them, you've had an amazing career. You've done things, the training, where you've worked, what you've done, what you've been through, and how you emerged on the other side is, I think you're probably as happy now as you've ever been in your life. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, you sure are. I hope you are. I hope everybody that watches this or listens to it anyway is reading it because I am happy. I'm blessed. Man, let me tell you something. People, will let things bother them their whole life that happened or should have happened or might have happened or could have happened or whatever. I believe in it's a plan. It's all God's plan, and I'm on the right track. I got 5 of the most beautiful grandchildren I could possibly have. I mean, they're not always good, but that's part. I think they get some of that from me. But I mean, I got my son and his 2 kids live 1 mile one way, and my daughter and her 3 kids live 2 miles the other way. I mean, my wife and I do a lot of babysitting, but we wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, it's like, this is my gift. I had to be gone most of my kids' lives. I mean, birthdays, holidays, everything. No Steve at the dinner table. Nobody. It was the same in my family. My dad was a prisoner of war in Vietnam from the time I was 13 to 21. For 7.5 years, no dad, no dad. Well, I was the same thing, only I was working. Now I have the opportunity to see my children and my grandkids. I spend an unbelievable amount of time with the kids, and the reason is because I love them so much and I enjoy them. But it's God's gift to me. I realized that the whole big picture of my life was all planned and it was all a gift, and I'm blessed. I'm not resentful towards any of my bosses or anybody that mistreated me in the business some way or another that I thought was important back then. I look at it like, you know what? If you were to ask me what was wrong with me a year or 2 years ago or whatever, I couldn't tell you because I got over it. When I got into my 60s, I went through some spells there where all of a sudden I got kidney stones, and I'm going, what is that? And I'm freaked out. I'm going, kidney stone. I mean, the pain in the middle of the night. And I thought I'm dying and go to the hospital. And oh my God, you got a kidney stone. I said, I can't have a kidney stone. I never had one. Well, you got one now. I mean, I went through cataracts. I had my hips replaced. I went through all these things, and I kept thinking, if I wasn't a true believer in Jesus Christ, I would have tapped out and had a real problem with being, picked on by God. But I don't, all it is an introduction to go forward. And what's happened is people are so busy in this day in life that they're not taking time to realize, hey, stop for a second and just be thankful that you mentioned it earlier. We both got up today. Whatever we did, we got up today. I mean, I got up in a better place than you did, but we got up today.
Yeah.
So, it's being thankful. And I would never boast or whatever, because the only one to boast about to me is the Lord. And so any of the things that I ever did, I mean, I had people give me unbelievable rash of things about not winning anything as Skinner. Well, he held over 50 titles in territorial days, and he never even got a title in WWF. I never got a title before that. I was told to win. I was told to lose. The Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The worth of a professional wrestler should never be measured in championships.
Well,
I insist. But that's the problem, because some of the greatest people ever to strap them up never won a title. The psychology to me means more than the belts.
Yeah.
Doing an effective job in the ring means more than any championship. I respect Gene Ligon as much as I respect Ric Flair. I respect you as much as I respect Andre the Giant. You know what I'm saying? You were the people that excelled at telling a story, at knowing the psychology, and knowing how to end it. It's like nobody else on the planet could, because wrestlers are singular. Nobody else does what pro wrestlers do. And it's like, it's a rare skill, and that's what I like. I'm old school. I like it in the ring, man. That's all I care about.
Well, there's only two real sports, don't you, Bob?
And they are?
Wrestling and roller derby, brother. The rest of that stuff people are watching, oh my God, it's not real.
I can't top that one, folks. That's the statement of the evening. Folks, the name of the book again is the Keirn Chronicles, Volume 2.
Both
My book of the year, man. My book of the year.
Well, make sure they understand there's a part 1 too. So if they
there is a part 1. They're both available at Amazon.com, as far as I understand, right?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Any place else they can pick it up? Bookstores?
No. And like I said, I can't speak highly enough about my writer. If you're not even interested in me as a wrestler or what I've done in my career, you want to read the book because the writer does a great job. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I read my own book. Well, I had to read it twice. I had to go through it, edit out some things. When he would write down stuff, I mean, then he sent me a rough draft and I'd see where, I might have used some bad language or something, just getting too excited talking to him on the phone. And I don't want that in there. I want a book that people can read, and they're not going to, come away from it saying, I wish they wouldn't have put that language in there. I want my kids to read it. I mean, or I'd like my son to read it, but I don't want to hand him a book where a guy's using foul language and talking about drugs and talking about alcohol and talking about whatever. I mean, or trashing people or just really just trying to drag everything down and bring it down to their misery. The best part about my life is I'm happy. I mean,
yeah, that's what I took from the book too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People say, well, what could you tell us bad about Vincent Mass? I tell you a million things, but I ain't going to, because you know what? He put 2 kids through college that happened to be my kids. He paid me enough that I put my kids through college with no student loans. My son's a doctor. That's 8 years of college. So how do I get mad at a guy, or how do I drag his name to what? For my benefit? Not a chance. I mean, I got the most respect for a lot of people that people wouldn't think I'd have, only because that I get it. I get it. And here's the best part. I know the business is a work. And now everybody knows. But I mean, I've got close friends like Nasty Boys. Brian Knobs is freaking out. He wants to be in the Hall of Fame so bad. And he keeps telling me, he says, man, I thought they were going to induct us because it was in Philadelphia and we're from out of town. Brian, it is a work. You don't worry about the Hall of Fame. If this was baseball and you're Wade Boggs and you're not getting put in the Hall of Fame, you should be upset, but whatever it is. I mean, and that's where you said the titles. People say, well, you're in the Hall of Fame. I said, well, I'm in about 3 or 4 of them, but I don't know where they're at. I just got these plaques people have sent me. But I mean, it's like they have no meaning. If you came to my house, I mean, this is the office, but you're going to see like alligator high on the wall.
Folks, he's moving his camera around his office, and it's loaded with all kinds of things.
Yeah, my dad, my grandfather, military, my dad's a war hero. I mean, I don't have any pictures of wrestling or me. But on the other hand, this was all of his medals, honors and stuff. That's him as a POW right there in Hanoi. I mean, that's what I surround my life with, reality. The life part is real. The wrestling part, it was just a journey. And I was glad I took it, don't get me wrong. But I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up.
Yeah, me too. I still don't know. You didn't get any better than you were, man. I really mean it. I'm not blowing smoke at you. From the territories to the majors, and it's still going on. And I'm really grateful that you took the time to talk to us. I really.
Well,
I hope you sell 8 million books, man.
Thank you. I'll be happy with 8.
All right, go out and get your Keirn Chronicles volumes 1 and 2. Thanks again, Steve.
Thanks, Bob.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wrestling Fans International Association is back. That's right, the premier fan club association of the 1970s and 1980s has been revived and is back in business. Join today. It's free at thewfia.org. That's thewfia.org. You can also join us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/WFIA 1969.
Was that amazing or what? How much does this fellow know, this Steve Keirn? He knows everybody. He's done everything. Hall of Fame times 10. I really mean that. You can't be a better professional wrestler than Steve Keirn. Nobody in history. Read his books. Read who writes the forwards. I mean, he's held in such high esteem by everybody who practically ever met him. I just, now I do too. Again, I think I met him a couple times during my reporter days, but my memory, what it used to be, I met so many people. Some people I was closer with than others and had more access to than others, And I certainly wasn't around when he was with the Fabulous Ones in Memphis. I wish I had been, because those tapes take the paint off the walls. Nobody was more over than the Fabulous Ones ever. Hall of Fame material. Soup to nuts. I want to remind you that we will not have a show on July 5th on the holiday weekend. I figure, everybody's going to be doing some fun things, celebrating. So let's take that week off. We'll be back July 12th. And if everything shakes down, we'll have John McAdam on the show that week. I'm really looking forward to that. John McAdam from the Stick to Wrestling podcast, the Arcadian Vanguard production. The Outdated Wrestling Hour and the Outdated Entertainment Hour are productions of Bob Smith Podcasts. Our website is outdatedwrestling.buzzsprout.com, where every one of our episodes is there. You can just hit a button and listen to them right from that site on your phone, whatever gizmo you like to use. Also, you can read about the Outdated Wrestling Hour fan club and fan club members. Keep an eye on your mailbox. By now, you should have received an article with me in it from around 89, and I hope you enjoy it. This is a rare one, and I hope you get a kick out of this. So it's a reprint, and I hope you really enjoy it. And we're going to schedule our next Zoom-style meeting within the next couple of days, so keep your eyes and ears peeled. I don't even know what that means. Find me on Facebook. I'm the guy singing with BB King, baby. You know what I'm saying? That really was 10 times. Find me on Instagram. Outdated Bob, my name is. I'm on Twitter. Well, kind of. But, Facebook is really the place. If you would like to get a hold of me, do that. And you can always write to us at outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. In our next edition, I'm also going to read a very interesting letter I got from a listener. You guys have been so kind to me. Thank you so much for doing that. And I want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July this year. Enjoy it. Cherish the good things while we got them. And as Ringo Starr, who is still touring and still putting on a great show, by the way, with his all-star band with Edgar Winter and Steve Lukather, and just go down the list. Unbelievably good. Ringo and the All-Stars, if they're still working, go see them. Well, anyway, as he'd say, peace and love, brothers. And I'll add the sisters. Peace and love.